everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Abu Dhabi Finance Week and welcome, Courtney. How are you today?
Doing great. Wonderful to be here with everybody. Thank you for having me.
Very good. Well, I think we should just jump right in. I think that the MC mentioned the long list of accolades. So I guess, can you kick us off with what are your keys to success, would you say, in a nutshell?
Yeah, so I think, one of the keys to success that I really like to talk about, especially within this region, is being able to be in a role every single day in an organization where you're just surrounded by incredible talent, founders who are creating these huge businesses that are not only going to impact themselves and their teams, but the countries even that they're operating in. So it's wonderful to get to be around innovation and technology day in and day out.
Great. And I know that, you're a founder yourself. You've started up companies as well. And you could say one of the things that 500 Global are good at is picking out, early talent and also picking out emerging markets. I noticed that you do a lot of reports in the RISE report recently. Can you tell us a little bit about your strategy with emerging markets and perhaps even emerging talent?
Sure. So a little bit of context. 500 started in Silicon Valley back in 2010. And in 2010, the idea of seed stage investing was really still forming. So 500 wanted to put a unique spin on seed stage investing. We invested both in the Bay Area, started spreading out around the US, and then ultimately decided from our first fund we were going to invest worldwide. So the first fund we started outside the US was actually in Mexico in 2013. And today we have more than 30 funds around the world. And as your colleague said, we invest in 80 markets. So when we're thinking about which markets we're going to invest in, we're looking for some key characteristics. We want to see a really strong youth population because it is young people who are going to continue to not only drive adoption, but the adoption of new technologies. We want to see a really healthy regulatory framework to be able to facilitate innovation and make it easy for entrepreneurs to start companies, for VCs to get started, and for exits to occur. And we really want to see that the kind of Wi-Fi mobile penetration is high enough that there's going to be proper access to bring an entire population online and into these products. So those are some of the key characteristics that we're thinking about from a country level perspective.
Great. And here in Abu Dhabi, there's no shortage of that. I mean, how have you seen this region thrive with those themes over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I think the Middle East has just been an incredible story, a phenomenal story about the use of innovation to drive an economy forward. And, I made my first visit to Abu Dhabi in 2019, but I actually moved to Riyadh in 2021. So I've been able to see firsthand what it looks like to see the UAE and governments around the region really make the way, pave the way with enormous ambition and resources to help entrepreneurs thrive. So we started our first fund actually in the region in 2017, and just a few numbers that I think kind of help people to understand the pace of growth in the Middle East in particular. Our first fund invested in 180 companies in the MENA region, all early seed investments. Today, we have 16 companies, I believe, valued at over $100 million in the region. Nobody thought that was possible when we launched our first fund, and it's just incredible to see the pace. And I think this region is going to do very well globally.
And in terms of the sectors of those companies, would you say that there was a strategy executed? Would you say that you kept on course? Were there any challenges along the way that made you think, actually, we might change course?
I don't think there's been a sense of changing course, but there are some trends. So you mentioned we have what's called the RISE report, which is the first time 500 has really leveraged our data set and our investment thesis and put it out for the public to see in terms of how we select markets and also what we see develop in terms of industries that indicate a market is growing in the right way. So we started investing heavily in e-commerce first within this region. Then we started to see kind of more pure play consumer technologies come online. Obviously, fintech and edtech has been incredible. I think logistics has also been really interesting in this region. And what we hope to see moving forward is a little bit more on the deep tech side, continue to develop. I think that will be really important.
And do you think the infrastructure's there? Is there the talent and the growth and the nurturing that is required to take the ecosystem to the next level?
It's certainly developing, and I think one of the unique advantages of seeing entrepreneurship and innovation become really inculcated across a country is that they have the opportunity. If you look at the UAE, they've done an incredible job of actually leapfrogging some of the regulatory frameworks that exist in other parts of the world. And that is the opportunity of an emerging market to be able to say, this worked here, this didn't work here, and this is how we're going to take advantage of that. So I think, the sandboxes, the ability to work really closely with regulators, that doesn't happen everywhere. And I think that is a significant benefit that will help us see more and more deep technologies coming online.
Because I think I saw in your report that emerging markets as a whole, the top 30 emerging markets that you've picked out will fast exceed the established markets. Do you think we'll start seeing a lot of those established market startups and VCs coming to this region and building on top of that? And how do you find that as a competitive landscape? Is that a good thing, a bad thing?
So first of all, what we call our investment thesis, it's called the rise of the next, right? The rise of the next economies. And the principle behind it is that if you look at the 30 economies that are most interesting from a venture perspective, their expected GDP growth over the next 10 years is actually higher than the US and China combined. And that is how we think about where we're going to invest and why we're going to invest. And with that in mind, I think you're seeing more and more international venture capitalists come to the region, start to pay attention to the region, invest within the region. And that's a great thing. We need a healthy mix of capital in this region. We need different types and stages of capital. I think we have probably a sufficient amount of seed and maybe even Series A. I still see a big gap in Series B and beyond in this region. And I think we want to see different sorts of capital. We need venture debt. We need other sorts of instruments to be able to support startups as well.
Yeah, I've got a panel just to plug that on Wednesday with Liquidity Group, who are going to help to plug some of that gap. Amazing. So definitely come down for that on Wednesday. And you mentioned a lot of these startups coming and setting up here in the UAE. I've got an office here in Hub 71. And so it's a really exciting ecosystem full of startups from all over the world. And so I'm wondering, when you come to managing portfolio startups who operate in multiple jurisdictions with multiple regulations, how do you do that? What advice do you give them?
It certainly takes a lot of work, and we're really fortunate to have a very large team worldwide. And I don't know the latest number, but I would guess about 25 people here in the region. We've had 40 companies, more than 40 companies, register in ADGM since we started investing here. So, I think it will continue to be a stronghold for startups trying to get licensed and get off the ground. And in terms of helping companies go from market to market, within the MENA region, this is very important. You need to be able to capture not just the UAE, but also potentially Saudi or Egypt and vice versa to really build, the billion-dollar exits that we're all looking for. So that regional connectivity is critical. And I think from a venture perspective, that can really only be done effectively if you have relationships and local teams across the region to be able to help, startups when they need access and when they need support.
And when you're investing, are there new innovative technologies that help you do your due diligence and understand these startups better? Are there any sort of new ways that you're looking at startups now with ESG and other themes as well?
I don't know if there's I heard Abdullah ask earlier whether or not, we were afraid that AI was going to take over our jobs. I think when you're managing large quantums of money, it's not as likely that you're going to see a decision made independent of an actual human being. However, I do think that today our portfolio is almost 3,000 companies worldwide. We've been investing for 13 years. We've seen similar business models, similar trajectories, similar developments across these ecosystems. And all of those insights and experiences certainly feed into the decisions that we're making moving forward. And we do utilize a lot of technology internally to be able to make sure that we are considering the data. But I think from a decision making, it's still the partners around the world.
So we live to see another day.
Live to see another day, yes.
And in terms of that, I mentioned ESG. Obviously, we're on the eve of COP28 here in the UAE, which is very exciting. How do we balance the need for profit, but also sustainability goals, and also social and governance issues? So how do we balance all of that whilst obviously having that bottom line to think about?
Sure. So I think I probably have a little bit of an atypical response here, which is we believe that as venture capitalists, our ability to seed top founders and founders being able to create incredible companies that create jobs is really a significant contribution to society. And ultimately, what these economies need to see is sustainability, increased GDP, increased growth, increased jobs being created. So rather than thinking of any one particular framework, we believe that continuing to invest in founders is actually what's going to move the needle. However, I will say, one of the things that 500 has been really focused on, our team worldwide is over 60% women. We are led by, myself and Christine Tsai are obviously women. And if you just look at our Middle Eastern portfolio, we have 30% nearly of our portfolio is female founded or co-founded, and half of our partners within the Middle East are women. So I believe you should be absolutely investing in incredible, portfolio investors and incredible founders. And I don't necessarily think that it takes a framework to do that. I think it takes the desire to just invest in the best companies, and the best companies are distribution-wise is pretty evenly male and female. So that's how I tend to think about it.
And in terms of the sustainability angle, are you trying to invest more in clean techs, or do you think that there are other ways that you can incorporate the sustainability theme into investment?
We don't have a standalone investment thesis related to sustainability at this point. I think it's still a very, very nascent kind of thesis that we will see built up more and more over time. But we do invest into sustainability related or adjacent companies across our portfolio, but no dedicated vehicle as of yet.
Okay. And in terms of, we're here in Abu Dhabi Finance Week, so you've seen obviously regulations here in Abu Dhabi with DeFi and other digital currencies. What do you think are the opportunities for startups, especially in this region, and what are some of the challenges?
I think the challenges within the region today are not unlike some of the challenges that we see around the world. There is always going to be a need for more talent, more technical talent, to see founders, operators who have seen really massive scale. And at the end of the day, that just comes down to being able to identify where that talent is and being able to recruit that talent as a founder or as a CEO. And that's the same challenge that happens in Silicon Valley, that happens, worldwide. So certainly talent is something that's really critical, but something we've seen really grow the talent base over the last decade of investing in this region. And I think, really as well, the ability to have put, Abu Dhabi and other cities in the region really on the map globally has been such an incredible boost to the ecosystem. And so we're excited to see how it continues to grow.
Great. And I guess at the end of the day, a lot of VCs talk about exit strategy. And I wanted to understand a little bit more about whether you feel that that goal is evolving. Are you getting more innovative in the ways that you might exit these days?
I think not just within the region, but worldwide, the three primary exit strategies are going to continue to be, IPO, M&A, and then, potentially some sort of, secondary measures if you're a fund manager. So I think there's not going to be any change in course in terms of the types of exits. I do think that M&A will play a much larger role than what people have anticipated within this region. I know there's a lot of headlines about how many unicorns will be created, et cetera. But, in our experience, it takes 10 to 12 years to really see an emerging market or any venture fund see the sort of exits from a listing perspective. And we're still in the early innings there. So I think for the region, M&A will continue to be the primary exit pathway.
And then finally, I guess I just wanted to get some tips for some of the startups that are here listening today. What advice would you give scale-ups, and how can they navigate an increasingly AI-rich, regulatorily burdensome kind of type environment? And geopolitically, there's a bunch of issues. So how can startups really take advantage of opportunities, and what tips would you give them?
I mean, first and foremost, to any founder running a business, whether it's seed stage or growth stage, you really have to be able to shut out the noise as much as possible. certainly coming from the industry, the venture industry, startups as a whole, you're always going to hear people talking about the next big thing or whatever's going on in the macros. And those things play some part, but at the end of the day, it's your relationship that with your customers that matter. So if you're able to continue being focused on your customers, creating products that are moving the needle from a revenue perspective, from a profit perspective, that's going to see you through any sort of macro changes or risks that are going on.
So the basics are still true.
It's back to the basics. I wish it were something else, but no. It is always just the end of the day, being in love with your customer.
Great advice. Well, thank you very much. I'd like you to thank our very esteemed guest, Courtney Powell here. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great festival.
Thank you so much.